I am not surprised to see that Diana Rudy is leaving. The email correspondence regarding efforts to identify funding for equity matters reflects conduct that is fundamentally inconsistent with lawful public procurement practices. With the exception of a then and now certificate, which would have to be done within 30 days and approved by the CMSD Board of Education, there are no circumstances under which procurement laws permit a school district to search for alternative funding sources after the fact in order to pay a vendor when proper financial authorization was never established or worse, was falsified. Public contracts must be properly authorized, encumbered, and compliant before services are performed. Attempting to find money after obligations have already been incurred is not a procedural error. It is a serious breakdown in financial controls and, based on the totality of evidence, very likely constitutes fraud. The over $500,000 contract was signed by Warren Morgan and Sonia Murray, and he went to grad school together in the same program. Based on these emails, the following individuals appear to have been involved in or connected to these procurement actions: Nicole M. Tompkins, Kevin Stockdale, Trent M. Mosley, James Wright, Dion Turner, Diana Rudy, shocking, right? Celia Thompson, Lisa Johnson, Michael C. Henderson, Carrie L. Cunningham. These emails are not ambiguous. They document active efforts to reconcile and justify payment for services after funds had already been obligated elsewhere. They retroactively justify a no-bid sole source contract. They did this after services were initiated, and then went locating pots of money when the vendor started submitting invoices. People can't be submitting invoices when a PO has not been issued because they are not vendors of CMSD without a valid contract. Despite the lack of proper financial authorization, senior CMSD officials proceeded by identifying alternative funding sources to cover the costs. Even then, those initial reallocations proved insufficient, forcing them to seek out additional funds months later to make up the difference. Procurement laws exist precisely to prevent this kind of after-the-fact justification and financial maneuvering. But when individuals operate as though they are above those legal safeguards, or prioritize accommodating superiors over complying with the law, this is the predictable result. Along with additional evidence, this pattern aligns with procurement fraud indicators, including unauthorized commitments, retroactive justification of expenditures, and misclassification of funding sources. This matter is being reported as such. Equally concerning is the role of building-level leadership. Why are principals permitting vendors to operate within schools without clear evidence of proper procurement, vetting, and authorization? What safeguards are in place to ensure that any organization interacting with students has been lawfully approved? It is particularly troubling that students were used in the creation of promotional TikTok content for a vendor. At Riverside School, this raises serious concerns about the judgment and oversight of Heather Comistar and Kyle Cohen. Having students participate in what amounts to promotional activity for a vendor without a valid contract reflects a failure to protect both students and the integrity of the educational environment. Why aren't school-level administrators required to verify that vendor contracts are supported by properly approved and funded purchase orders before allowing services to begin in their schools, particularly when the services include directly working with students? That should absolutely be a part of their due diligence. And I brought this up to both of them privately. I explained how deeply uncomfortable I was when I saw that TikTok. But they don't seem to think any of this is problematic at all. But why would it seem problematic to a school that allows a vice principal to monetize his public position as a social media influencer, creating content almost exclusively at school, using school resources and time, and mocking parents' concerns for content? Parents are expected to trust that schools are exercising sound judgment in determining who is allowed into buildings and who is given access to students. That trust is compromised when vendors appear to be operating without authorization, oversight, or a clear legally binding contract. Is it blind compliance to authority figures at CMSD? Is it blind compliance without any critical thinking? Is it the same kind of blind compliance they are expecting out of our children? I suspect it is. Ohio laws are very strong when it comes to this situation. The contract was void. It was as if the contract never existed. And that is how it should have been treated. Also, I believe those people in the email had a legal responsibility to report to governing bodies that this $500,000 contract was initiated without financial authorization. While I was informed that the district is no longer working with this vendor, that response is insufficient. It does not address how the vendor was approved, how these procurement failures occurred, how people associated with this contract were allowed to work directly with students or appear in their promotional materials on TikTok, or what corrective actions have been implemented to ensure this does not happen again. I believe it has already happened again multiple times, and will continue to happen until there are indictments. These are not technical violations. They point to systemic failures with potentially serious legal and financial implications.